All right, so here's an example program. Now I don't want to give you the exact program you're going to write, so I'm not going to use the Pythagorean theorem in this. What I do want to use is this formula for the volume of a cylinder, because it has a squared in it, so it's somewhat similar. So it's pi times r squared times h. So I'm going to have the user input a volume and a height and work backwards to find a radius. Okay, so they're going to input the volume and the height. And for this, I'm not going to worry about units. You don't have to either. So they're just going to input the volume and the height. I'm going to work backwards to find the radius. Okay, so if we look at this, once they input the volume, we're going to have to divide it by the height. Undo that. We're going to have to divide it by pi, which I'm probably just use 3.14. And then we're going to have to square root that to get the r by itself to print out what the radius would be. Okay, so if I go back here, I have my normal stuff. This is how your screen should look to start. So I know I'm going to be using the scanner. Okay, so I'm going to import, and I'm going to make some mistakes here, I'm sure. I believe it's java.util.scanner, because I'm going to be asking them questions. Okay? I already know I forgot something there. I'm going to come back and put that there, a semicolon. I'm also going to import the math. So that was this from the video earlier. I like to keep some spaces here just to keep myself organized. Now I know I don't need this. I will put in the comments here that I'm going to find the radius of a cylinder given volume and height. So as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about what variables am I going to need? Right? What variables am I going to need? So I know I'm going to need something for the volume, right? So I'll call that double, and I'll just call that volume, and I'll set that equal to 0.0. Let me try to make this full screen if I can, which I don't know if I can. Let's see if I can not mess it up here. That was not the right button, as you can obviously see. That was not the right button either. Okay, now my mouse isn't working. I don't know why. It must have turned something off. Let me turn it back on. Okay, not connected, of course. So this is a fun way to make a video, isn't it? Okay, let me get this mouse working for you. Okay, now we're back in the game. All right, so I won't make it full screen, but we'll minimize this to try to make this a little bit bigger for now. All right, so I got the volume. So that's one thing they're going to input. They're also going to input the height. So I'll just call that height. They are going, so those are the two things they're going to input. Let's see, when I'm going to have to divide in mine, and yours won't be quite this confusing, but I'm going to have to divide by pi or 3.14 times the height. Because remember the formula was pi r squared h. Okay, so I'm going to have a variable I think called, maybe I'll call it volume divided. So that'll be what I get after I divide that. I'm going to have a variable called, I'm going to call it R2 as in R squared. And then I'm going to have a variable just R. That'll be my radius. So I think that's all I'll need, but you know, you never know. Oh, I also, because you're going to be doing this, I'll have a variable called round R. That'll be after I round it. And I don't need to put, actually, I'll just call that, I won't use a double for that one because it's going to be rounded. We'll try to use an integer for that one. All right, so now let's figure out, what do we got to ask these people? So we have to do the scanner, okay? So I already have, actually I'm going to delete these. I already have a system.out.print, so I'm just going to change kind of what's in there. I like my things looking a little neater than this looks, so let me go down. Can I go into, we'll go into here. Okay, so I'll ask, what is the volume of your cylinder? Pretty simple, right? And notice it's in quotations, life is good. Okay, now here's where, and usually I do this before the question, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to start my scanner. I'm just going to name it SCNR. That seems to kind of be my standard. Okay, and I'll type new scanner and then system.in. So that's my, so I kind of loaded the scanner. Now I'm kind of like getting it out of the toolbox ready to use. Okay, and whenever they type in the answer to this, so it knows it's looking for the next number, I'm going to say put that in the volume variable. So that'll be SCNR dot next double, because remember it was a double variable. Okay, so now we have the volume. So now I'm going to do another one. What is the height of your cylinder? Okay, so I don't need to like, I already have the scanner out. So line 17 doesn't need to be repeated. So that's going to go in the height section. So I'll do height SCNR dot next double, like that. Okay, so I've now asked for the two things that I want them to input. So now I have to start doing my math. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out what that volume divided is. So that's where I'm taking the volume and I'm dividing it by pi times whatever their height was. And I'm just solving that equation. Again, this is going to be a little different than yours, a little different steps. So I'm going to put volume divide is going to equal, and I'm going to put this in parentheses. I like to stay organized. So I'm going to do whatever they typed in for volume divided by, and I'm going to put it in another set of parentheses, height times 3.14, which is pi. Okay, so hopefully now that's starting to solve my problem. Okay, now I have that volume divided. That's going to equal what the R squared is. So now I need to figure out what the R is going to be. So I think I maybe actually had one too many variables, but that's okay. So I'm going to do R is going to equal that the math dot, I need to use a capital M, math dot SQRT of the volume divided. Okay, so the radius, and remember that's the double. And now I'm going to also do the rounding. So round R is going to equal math dot round of R. So now I have my R and my R round R. So now I'm going to print those out. So the exact radius of your cylinder is, and I'm putting a space before the quotation, and then I'll do a plus and I'll have room for that variable. Then maybe I'll put a period there and then I'll start the rounded radius of your cylinder is a space just for aesthetics, and then I'll do the round R here variable, and then I'll come here and just put a period in the quotations, and let's see. That should be it. Probably going to be some errors, so we'll get this figured out. I wish you could see a little more, but this is kind of what we have here, so it is what it is. I don't know why it doesn't want to go full screen. Maybe if I hit that, and there we go. That gives us a little more space. So let's run it and see what happens. Okay, so somewhere in line 25, it looks like I made a little mistake. So I think the issue it might be having is the fact that this is a double and this is an integer. So let's try making them all doubles and see what happens. And so I'll run it again. So no more errors. That doesn't happen very often. So let's say I have a cylinder with a volume of 400. Hit enter. What is the height? Let's say 2. So the radius would be 7.98, blah, 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 blah. Rounded would be 8. So that seemed to work out pretty well. So if I would plug that back into the formula, and I'm trying to find my calculator, if I would do pi times 7.98 squared times the height, which I said was 2, I should get right around 400, and I do. So that's somewhat similar to the program you're going to be writing. Not exactly, somewhat similar. So good luck.